you guys, it's me Himaru or Himena, and I'm finally back with some more OC content for you guys. I mentioned in a past video that I was planning on revamping their story, since I wasn't completely happy with it. So if you watched my previous OC lore videos, you don't have to disregard them. But just remember that the plot isn't the same anymore. A couple of things stayed the same, like their personalities, but other than that, there are a few new changes. But enough of that, let's get started. My story takes place in a world where everyone is born with powers. And when someone awakens them, they have the ability to use their powers at any state. But in rare cases, there are those whose power depends on their emotional state, which is seen as dangerous. Over time, if they don't learn to control their powers, they'll eventually lose them and become normies. Those whose powers depend on their emotional state are known as E-types, and they're honestly seen as a lost cause, and many people believe that they should just give up and become normies. The uncertainty of if they'll ever be able to properly use their powers is scary, which is why many would prefer them not use them at all. However, there's a special academy that allows anyone with powers to attend, whether they're an E-type or not. That school is called Core Academy. This is a very prestigious academy that helps anyone with powers grow. And most importantly, they've been able to do what was seen as impossible, and that is to help E-types learn to control their abilities. However, it's not easy getting into this academy. Core Academy holds an entrance exam of sorts to see which E-types are truly willing to learn to use their powers. However, not everything is as it seems. And now we can get into what happens after. Starting off with the main character, Sebastian Lopez. And I'm gonna go ahead and get this out of the way, but yes, I've already shown this speed paint before. I didn't want to show another one since this drawing is part of a set, so I hope you guys don't mind. But anyways, Sebastian is a 19-year-old pyrokinetic, meaning he can manipulate fire. He has such a powerful ability, but sadly when he awakened his power, he soon realized that he couldn't control it like everyone else could. Because of this, his classmates started picking on him and referred to him as an E-type. In most cases, it could be dangerous to provoke an E-type. They could get mad and lose control. However, Sebastian never really got mad. He buried his emotions and gave in to their words. He agreed with his bullies and thought it was useless to try and fight back. The thing about Sebastian is that no matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't seem to use his powers, no matter what he was feeling. So he basically gave up and decided to give in and eventually become a normie. After graduating high school, he took a gap year, and it was then that he realized that he didn't want to give up and lose his power. He wanted to fit in with everyone else and be able to use his powers however he wanted. So once school starts back up again, he decides to try and take the entrance exam for Core Academy. Go big or go home, I guess. However, things don't go the way he planned, and he ultimately ends up failing the exam. I don't want to say how and why he fails just yet, but let's just say he loses control. Anyways, because of the events that occurred, the proctors at Core Academy decided he wasn't worth the risk, and instead sent him to Lucid Academy, a school that prepares E-types to eventually become normies. But why would Core Academy turn him down? Is their goal not to help those who can't control their abilities? Well, the Academy's not exactly telling the whole truth, but I'll probably explain this more in detail in another video. But going back to Sebastian, personality-wise, he's an awkward dork with pretty low self-esteem. But after getting sent to Lucid Academy, he doesn't want to give up. He changes the way he presents himself and tries to have more confidence in himself. While he's there, he decides to change the rules society has bestowed on E-types. So even though he knows not everyone there will agree, he proposes they try and learn to use their powers despite not getting into Core Academy, which had never been done before. But of course, he can't do this on his own. So even though it's not easy, he eventually finds some friends who share the same ideals as him and help him try and change societal norms. Next up, we have Danella Garcia, or Danny for short. She is also a 19-year-old E-type with enhanced strength. I didn't mention this before, but Core Academy isn't the only academy that accepts E-types. There are smaller ones, but they just don't have the certainty that they'll be able to help E-types control their abilities like Core Academy does. And Danny actually tried attending one of these smaller academies, but sadly she was rejected. The thing about Danny is that ever since she was young, she was always a bit different than the rest of the girls her age. She preferred hanging out with her brother, wouldn't mind getting dirty every once in a while, and because of her enhanced strength, chaos would usually follow. Because of this, a lot of her quote-unquote friends would advise her to be more chill and to start acting like other girls. I mean, it's bad enough that she's an E-type, and with the way she was acting, they told her she wouldn't be able to make any friends. Because of this, Danny decided to try and present herself as someone quiet, shy, and delicate. even though she's actually a confident extrovert with a bit of a temper who likes to say what's on her mind. But because of this new mentality that she tries to uphold, as she was taking the exam, instead of using her powers, she tried to lay low and just hope that she'd get in, which obviously didn't work in her favor. The proctors thought she wasn't taking this seriously enough, so she failed to get into one of the smaller academies. But Danny doesn't want to be a normie. She loves having her powers, which is why she wants to be able to learn to control them, so others won't judge her, and so maybe she'll finally be able to fit in with the rest of the girls. So she tries again, but this time she tries to go for Core Academy. She knows it's more difficult to get in, but her brother Haime is also taking this exam with her, so what could possibly go wrong? And if you haven't guessed it already, she fails the test, which causes her to end up in Lucid Academy along with Sebastian and some other characters I'll introduce soon. Next, we have Danny's younger brother Haime Garcia. Haime is an 18-year-old E-type who honestly could care less that he's an E-type, because despite being one, he's actually been able to somewhat control his ability. Haime is an ergokinetic, which basically means he can manipulate energy. The best way I can explain it is to think of Adam Eve from Invincible, except just not as strong as her. The only way Haime has been able to use his powers is as defense, so basically creating force fields. Haime would get picked on a lot when he was younger since he just did whatever he wanted with his power. But other kids didn't like that. They thought he was being careless since he's an E-type. So they would pick on him and start fights since they knew Haime couldn't control his abilities. So he was an easy target. But surprisingly, by doing that, Haime slowly learned to create barriers to defend himself. This angered his bullies. How was he able to use his powers? Isn't he an E-type? Not wanting to back down, his bullies, instead of fighting, resorted to using their words. They would call Haime a coward for hiding behind his force fields, and those words got to him. After graduating high school, he wanted to prove everyone wrong, so he tried going to Core Academy with his sister Danny. And you guys know how it goes. After not getting in, he gets sent to Lucid Academy. At the academy, when the other students hear about Sebastian's plan to continue and try to learn to use their abilities, they don't think he can do it. Everyone at Lucid Academy believes that they'll never be able to use their powers. If anything, they think Sebastian and the others were foolish to even try and go for Core Academy. But Haime is one of the few who agrees to help Sebastian out. And since Haime agrees, they soon also recruit Danny to help. But as confident as they are to keep going with their plan, they soon realize they have no one to teach them. Neither of them have been able to use their powers properly, so they need to find someone who kinda knows what they're doing. Which is easier said than done since no one believes they can do it. However, whenever they took the entrance exam, Haime saw someone there who might be able to help them learn. That brings me to the next character, Dae Yoon. Dae is the same age as Haime and usually has a serious expression. Despite being an E-type, most don't think he comes across as one. And that would be because over time, he's been able to manage his emotions well. And because of that, he's gotten a good grasp on how to use his power, telekinesis. Dae's a smart honor student who hates it when people look down on him. So even before taking the entrance exam for Core Academy, he was already working on suppressing his emotions in order to properly use his ability. Because of this, people around him were actually a bit intimidated by him and didn't dare mess with him. His classmates would actually try and get on his good side, since it's not common to find an E-type who has control of their powers. But anyways, like I mentioned before, Dae hates it when people look down on him. And this is due to his mom leaving him when he was young. She left him and his dad because of the fact that Dae was an E-type. She thought there was absolutely no way Dae would survive in a world that looks down on E-types. So she left. This caused Dae to do anything in his power to prove her wrong. He was a top student in his high school, he was a natural leader. He basically tried to put up a front that he was the perfect student. The only thing he needed was to attend the most prestigious school, Core Academy, which in hindsight, it should have been a breeze. He was a perfect student who already had a good grasp of his telekinesis, so he was confident. Unfortunately, the unexpected happened, and while he was there, something set him off. And for the first time in his life, he lost control. Because of this, he was sent to Lucid Academy. And let's just say he wasn't exactly happy about it. He felt like everything he had worked for fell apart the moment he failed the entrance exam. However, even though he's in Lucid Academy, he still tries to improve and control his power even better than before. But before he can even start, someone goes up to him and asks him for help. Haime was there when Dae took his entrance exam. And even though Dae lost control, Haime noticed that even before that, Dae had a good grasp of his powers, despite being an E-type. So he went up to him and asked him to join him, Sebastian, and Danny so other students can see that it is possible to learn without Core Academy. However, Day's plan is to try and transfer to Core Academy and to try and take the entrance exam again. So he declines and tells him that he would rather focus on himself rather than helping others. Yeah, Day has a bit of an attitude, but don't worry, it doesn't take long for him to give in and eventually join them. And maybe a little someone helps him understand and gives him a reason to help them out. Now we have his older sister, Aki Yun. She's 19 and has the power of flight. Aki is very sarcastic and nonchalant, and because of this, she doesn't really mind that she's an E-type. But she still would like to be able to control her powers, so she takes an entrance exam for one of the smaller academies. It's not Core Academy, but she's fine with that, since she ended up getting in. She stayed there for a year until she found out that Day would be trying to go for Core Academy. The thing about Day and Aki's relationship is that they're not that close. They're half-siblings, but that isn't the problem. They used to be close when they were kids, but when they got older, they slowly grew apart. Since Day was always focused on school, he and Aki hardly spent time together. Whenever Aki would try to hang out with him, he would always be too busy to do anything. Aki was upset at first, but she ended up finding some friends to spend time with. However, the people she would surround herself with started getting on her nerves. They would always talk about Day, how incredible it was that he was a top student, and most importantly that he was able to control his abilities. After a while, Aki slowly starts to resent her brother. She felt like he was trying to outshine her, even though they're both E-types. Day was growing quickly both in power and smarts. So when she found out that he was going for the top academy, she didn't want to get left behind. So she dropped out of the school she was attending and decided to take the entrance exam for Core Academy along with Day. It was risky, but she didn't want Day to keep outshining her. And ultimately, this decision didn't work in her favor since she ended up failing the exam. Now she was really regretting her decision. I mean, she was already in a pretty good school, but now she's stuck in Lucid Academy. She was planning on contacting the academy she was attending before to see if she could attend again. But then she found out that Day still wasn't giving up on Core Academy. So, just like him, she tries focusing on her power. But she takes a different approach. She instead approaches Sebastian and tells him she would like to help them. She can't control her ability that well, and the most she can do is levitate a bit. But she does this to prove to Day that she doesn't need Core Academy to show him how strong she is. But of course, like I mentioned, Day does end up joining them. And over time, I think he and Aki would talk it out, come to an understanding, and slowly grow closer again. And last but certainly not least, we have Lynn Jonesy. He's a 19-year-old teleporter and a nepo baby. He's a jokester, doesn't take things too seriously, and likes to have fun. But that doesn't sit well with his dad, since he's an influential person. His dad graduated from Core Academy, but he's not an E-type. On the other hand, Lynn is, which is why his dad wants him to attend in order for him not to embarrass him. However, Lynn doesn't care what people think of him. He doesn't want to learn to use his power, especially if that's what his dad wants. If anything, he finds it funny how scared and judgmental society can be just because he's an E-type. But just because he doesn't care what people think of him, doesn't mean he doesn't get annoyed when people talk bad about him. So in order to not get talked about, he often pretends his power is something big and powerful. When in reality, if he uses his powers too much, he gets a headache and ends up throwing up. He tries to push back taking the entrance exam for Core Academy, but after taking a gap year, his dad forces him to go. However, Lynn doesn't want to attend, so he purposely fails the exam and gets sent to Lucid Academy. But his dad doesn't know that. As far as he's concerned, Lynn passed the exam and is currently on a path to greatness. When in reality, he's now in a place that doesn't even teach him to use his ability. When he hears about Sebastian's plan, he finds it hilarious, and in all honesty, he doesn't think he can do it. But since it's the only interesting thing going on at that school, he decides to join him to see how things go. The more time he spends with Sebastian and the others, the more he realizes that it's not a bad thing if he learns to use his ability, especially if he's doing it on his own accord and not his father's. He also ends up developing a small crush on Aki, which is another reason why he hangs out with them. Oh my goodness, that was a lot. But I really hope you guys enjoyed what I have so far. I personally love this new version of their story. Also, please remember that everything is subject to change. But I really love what I have so far, so I'm hoping I'll keep everything the same for the most part. Also, on another note, look at this beautiful animatic that Boki did of Day and Haime! It's so beautiful, I'm obsessed with it. And now that I got this video out of the way, I hope to create more videos with these goobers in the future. But that's all I have for this video, so thanks for watching, and other than that, until next time.